Hey everyone, and welcome to a new sleep dive.
Oh.
Tonight we're going to be focusing on building a mind for numbers.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about how to memorize an entire math book while you sleep. So this might sound a little crazy,
Yeah.
but we're going to be explaining exactly how to do it using a combination of delta, brainwave learning, and memory palaces.
That sounds really interesting. I'm excited to dive into that.
Yeah, me too. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. But before we get into the specifics of how to actually download a math book into your brain while you sleep, I think it'd be good to start with the basics.
Yeah, definitely.
So, maybe you could explain what a memory palace is and how it can help us improve our memories.
Sure. So a memory palace is basically a mental technique where you use a familiar place like your home or your school.
Okay.
And you imagine placing the things you want to remember in specific locations throughout that place. So let's say you want to remember a grocery list. You could imagine placing each item on the list in a different room in your house. So you might imagine a carton of milk on your kitchen counter, a loaf of bread on your dining room table, and a bag of apples on your couch.
Okay, I see.
And then when you need to remember your grocery list, you just mentally walk through your house and visualize those items in those locations.
So you're basically creating a visual map of information in your mind.
Exactly. And the more vivid and multisensory you make those images, the easier it will be to remember them.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So how does this apply to learning math?
Well, just like you can use a memory palace to remember a grocery list,
Yeah.
you can also use it to remember mathematical concepts.
Okay.
So let's say you're trying to learn the Pythagorean theorem.
Right.
You could imagine placing the different parts of the theorem in different rooms in your house. So you might imagine a right triangle in your living room, the square of the hypotenuse in your bedroom, and the sum of the squares of the other two sides in your bathroom.
And then when you need to remember the Pythagorean theorem, you just mentally walk through your house and visualize those concepts in those locations.
That's right.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds so simple, but I can already see how powerful this technique could be.
It really is. It's been used by memory experts for centuries, and it's even been featured in popular culture.
Like in the Sherlock Holmes stories.
Exactly. Sherlock Holmes is famous for using a memory palace to store vast amounts of information.
That's right. I remember reading about that.
So if it's good enough for Sherlock Holmes, it's definitely good enough for us.
Absolutely. Now, before we get into the specifics of how to create a memory palace for math, I think it would be good to address one thing that you mentioned earlier,
Okay.
delta brainwave learning. Can you explain what that is and how it fits into all of this?
Sure. Delta brainwaves are the slowest brainwave frequencies, and they're associated with deep, dreamless sleep.
Okay.
And when our brains are in this delta state, they're very receptive to new information. So what we're going to do is use a combination of guided meditation and binaural beats to gently guide your brain into the delta state. And once you're in that state, we'll start feeding you the mathematical information that you want to learn.
And because your brain is in such a receptive state, it'll easily absorb that information.
Exactly.
Wow, this is all starting to sound very sci-fi.
I know, right? But it's actually based on real science. There have been a number of studies that have shown that delta brainwave learning can be very effective.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So are you ready to start building your sleep-ready memory palace?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. So the first step is to choose a familiar place that you can easily visualize in your mind.
And for this deep dive, we're going to be using a really cool location, the city of Athens.
Yeah, specifically a popular sightseeing route provided by big bus tours.
This route has 50 distinct stops, which are perfect for creating loci in our memory palace.
And each stop is packed with history and interesting sights, which will make it even easier to create those vivid multi-sensory images.
Right, so we're going to move linearly along this route with no backtracking to ensure clarity and easy recall.
And to make this even more effective, we'll be incorporating multi-loci at each stop. This means using multiple memory pegs within each location.
So for example, let's say one of our loci is the Acropolis. Instead of just using the entire Acropolis as a single peg, we'll identify specific locations within it, like the Parthenon, the Erechtheion, and the Propylaea.
Exactly. Each of these locations becomes a distinct memory peg within the overall loci of the Acropolis.
Think of it as creating a multi-layered, interconnected network of memories, allowing us to store significantly more information in our memory palace.
Precisely.
So are you ready to embark on this journey and build your sleep-ready memory palace?
Just go.
Right. Our first stop on the Athens Big Bus Tour, and therefore loci number 1 in our memory palace is
Syntagma Square, the heart of modern Athens. Picture yourself standing in this bustling square surrounded by historic buildings and the vibrant energy of the city.
Now imagine the first key concept from our mathematics book. Let's say it's addition, appearing right there in Syntagma Square.
How would you transform that abstract concept into a vivid, memorable image?
Well, how about this? We imagine a giant plus sign made of gleaming gold towering over the square. People are literally climbing on it, adding themselves to this ever-growing symbol of mathematical unity.
Oh, I like that. That's a really strong visual.
Yeah, and it captures the essence of addition perfectly.
Absolutely.
Okay, so for loci number 2, we're gonna...
The Panathenaic Stadium, the only stadium in the world built entirely of marble.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a really impressive sight. And for this location, let's focus on the concept of subtraction.
Interesting. So a stadium built for competition, but we're talking about taking something away.
Exactly. What image comes to mind for you?
Well, how about this? A massive marble sculpture of the minus sign. But here's the twist lots. Parts of the sculpture are constantly chipping away, disappearing into thin air. It's like subtraction is happening in real time.
I love that. It's such a dynamic representation of subtraction.
Yeah, and the fact that it's happening to a material as seemingly permanent as marble makes it even more memorable.
Absolutely.
Okay, so for loci number 3.
We arrive at the Temple of Olympian Zeus.
This was one of the largest temples in the ancient world, right?
That's right. Only a few columns remain standing, but you can still get a sense of its former grandeur.
So for this location, we'll tackle the concept of multiplication.
Okay. What kind of image are you thinking of?
I'm picturing hundreds of miniature versions of the temple sprouting up around the original ruin.
Oh, wow.
Each mini-temple is an exact replica, perfectly formed, as though the original temple has multiplied itself.
I can practically see it. It's a really powerful visual that captures the essence of multiplication perfectly.
Okay, so for loci number 4, we're going to...
The National Garden.
A change of scenery. From grand temples and ancient ruins to a tranquil garden.
Exactly. It's a beautiful green oasis in the heart of the city.
So how can we represent division in such a peaceful setting?
Well, how about this? Picture a serene pond in the garden with a perfectly circular island in the center.
Okay.
Now imagine the island slowly dividing itself, splitting into 2 identical, smaller islands.
I love that. It's simple but effective, and it incorporates the tranquility of the garden into the image.
Right.
All right, so for loci number 5.
We'll head to the Parliament building, home to the Greek Parliament.
Okay, so from a serene garden to the center of political power.
Our Memory Palace journey is full of surprises.
It is.
Yeah.
And for this location, we'll encounter the concept of an equation.
All right, what kind of image are you thinking of?
I'm imagining a massive set of scales in front of the Parliament building, perfectly balanced.
Okay.
On one side of the scales, you have complex symbols and numbers representing one side of an equation. And on the other side, you have a different set of symbols and numbers perfectly counterbalancing the first side.
That's a really cool image. It represents both the equality at the heart of every equation and the balance and fairness we associate with government.
Exactly.
Okay, on to loci number 6.
What's next?
The Benaki Museum, a treasure trove of Greek art and history.
A museum seems like a fitting place to explore the unknown.
It does, and for this location, we'll explore the concept of a variable.
Okay, so what kind of image can we conjure up in this museum to represent a variable?
How about a special exhibit in the museum featuring a series of blank pedestals? Each pedestal has a spotlight shining on it, but the actual artifacts are constantly changing, morphing from one form to another. These are the variables, the unknowns in our mathematical equations, forever shifting and changing.
Oh, that's a really cool idea. I love the dynamism of that image.
Yeah, it really captures the ever-changing nature of variables.
Okay, so moving on to loci number 7.
We come to the Byzantine and Christian Museum, showcasing the rich artistic heritage of the Byzantine era.
Another museum, but this time with a specific historical focus.
That's right. And for this location, we'll focus on the concept of a constant.
So something that remains unchanged amidst the vastness of history.
Exactly. What kind of image comes to mind?
Well, how about this? Imagine a central chamber in the museum housing an ancient, intricately designed mosaic. The mosaic is breathtakingly beautiful.
Yeah.
But here's the key detail. No matter how many times you walk through the museum, no matter how many other artifacts you see, the mosaic remains unchanged.
I love that imagery. It really highlights the unchanging nature of a constant.
Yeah, and it's especially powerful in a place that's dedicated to preserving the past.
Definitely.
Okay, let's move on to loci number 8.
All right. For our 8th stop, we'll visit the Numismatic Museum.
What is that?
It's a museum dedicated to the history of coins and currency.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So here we'll explore the concept of a formula.
I'm intrigued. What kind of image did you come up with for this one?
Well, imagine a massive vault in the museum filled with ancient coins from every civilization imaginable.
Yeah.
Now imagine that each coin has a unique formula etched on its surface, a secret code that unlocks a specific mathematical truth.
I love that. It's like turning these symbols of value and exchange into vessels of mathematical knowledge.
Exactly.
All right, on to loci number 9.
Our final stop for today is the National Archaeological Museum.
Oh, wow, the grand finale.
It is. This is one of the most important museums in Greece, and it houses artifacts from across the country's vast history.
Okay, so for this location, we'll encounter the concept of a theorem.
What kind of image are you picturing for this one?
I'm imagining a grand hall in the museum with a towering statue in the center.
Okay.
But instead of a human figure, the statue is an abstract representation of a famous mathematical theorem, perhaps the Pythagorean theorem or Euler's identity.
Interesting.
Light streams in from above, illuminating the statue, and as you approach it, you can hear the faint echoes of mathematical discussions throughout history, as though the statue itself is the embodiment of all mathematical knowledge.
Wow, that's a really powerful image. It truly captures the weight and importance of a mathematical theorem.
Yeah, and the added sensory details of the light and the echoing voices make it even more memorable.
Absolutely.
So we've now covered the first 9 loci of our sleep-ready memory palace.
But this is just the beginning.
We'll continue building our memory palace, loci by loci, until we've covered all 50 stops on our virtual tour of Athens.
And once our memory palace is complete, we'll guide you through the process of sleep learning using delta brainwave entrainment to gently imprint these images deeply into your subconscious mind.
You'll wake up with an enhanced understanding of mathematics, a mind for numbers that will astound you.
But before we get to that exciting part, let's take a moment to discuss some other fascinating aspects of learning and memory that will further enhance your sleep learning experience.
Sounds good.
So you know how we've been talking about building this awesome memory palace?
Yeah, it's going to be epic.
Right. But even with this amazing tool, we need to be careful of something called the illusion of competence.
Illusion of competence. What is that?
It's basically when we trick ourselves into thinking we understand something just because it feels familiar.
Oh, so like when you read a chapter in a textbook and you think, yeah, I got this, but you try to explain it to someone and you're like,
Exactly. Or, you take a test and you bomb it, even though you felt confident going in.
Yeah, I've definitely been there.
Yeah.
So what can we do to avoid falling into this trap?
One of the best ways is to use active recall.
Active recall.
Yeah, instead of just passively rereading or reviewing material, you actively try to retrieve it from memory.
So like quizzing yourself.
Exactly. Or trying to explain the concept to someone else without looking at your notes.
So it's like you're really forcing your brain to work for it,
That's right. And the more you do it, the stronger those neural connections become.
which leads to better retention and understanding.
Exactly.
So how does this tie into our sleep learning method?
Well, by incorporating active recall into our memory palace construction, we're not just creating static images. We're engaging with the material in a way that makes it more memorable.
So it's like we're giving our brains a workout before we even go to sleep.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And speaking of workouts, there's another technique that can really boost our learning interleaving.
Interleaving. I think I've heard of that. Does it have something to do with mixing things up?
Yeah, exactly. Instead of practicing one skill or concept over and over, you switch between different ones.
So like instead of spending an hour just practicing addition problems, I would do some addition, some subtraction, some multiplication.
Exactly.
That seems counterintuitive, though. Wouldn't it be better to master one thing before moving on to the next?
You'd think so, but actually, our brains learn better when we force them to make connections between different concepts.
Interesting. So it's like cross-training for our minds.
Exactly.
And how does this apply to our sleep-ready memory palace?
Well, instead of grouping all our addition images in one area of the memory palace, we can scatter them throughout, intermingling them with images representing other concepts.
So we're creating a more interconnected web of memories.
Exactly. And that makes the learning process more effective.
This is all making so much sense. Now, I know we've been talking a lot about different techniques and strategies, but I think it's important to acknowledge that even with all these tools, there's one major obstacle that we all face.
You mean procrastination?
Yes, procrastination. It's the ultimate learning killer.
Oh, I know. But it's not just about laziness or poor time management. There's actually a neurological basis for procrastination.
Really?
Yeah, our brains are wired to seek instant gratification. So when we're faced with a challenging task that doesn't offer an immediate reward, our brains try to avoid it.
Like our brains are saying, nah, let's do something fun instead.
Exactly. And each time we give in to that urge, we're strengthening the neural pathways associated with procrastination, making it even harder to resist in the future.
So how do we break this cycle? How do we overcome our brain's natural tendency to procrastinate?
Well, the first step is to become aware of our procrastination cues. What are the things that typically trigger us to procrastinate?
For me, it's definitely social media and, just the internet in general. Yeah. It's so easy to get sucked into that black hole.
I totally get it. And once you've identified your triggers, you can start to develop strategies to counteract them.
Like what?
Well, one popular technique is the Pomodoro technique. You set a timer for 25 minutes of focused work, followed by a 5-minute break. And you repeat that cycle a few times.
I've heard of that. It's supposed to be really effective.
It is, because it breaks down work into manageable chunks, and it also builds in rewards, which helps to keep us motivated.
And speaking of motivation, I think it's important to remember that we don't have to go through this learning journey alone.
Absolutely. Teamwork can make a huge difference.
It's like that saying, 2 heads are better than 1.
Exactly. When we work with others, we can bounce ideas off each other, catch each other's mistakes, and keep each other accountable.
And it can just make the whole learning process more fun and engaging.
Right. It's like we're creating a community of learners.
Exactly. And that community can extend beyond our immediate study group.
Oh, definitely. There are so many online resources and communities where you can connect with other learners, share ideas, and get support.
So we're not just building memory palaces. We're building a network of like-minded individuals who are all on this learning journey together.
I love that. And speaking of journeys, we're getting close to the final destination of this particular leg of ours.
You mean test taking?
Yes, the dreaded test. But don't worry, all the work we've done so far has prepared us well.
So we're not going in unarmed.
Exactly. We've got our memory palaces, our active recall strategies, our interleaving techniques, and our procrastination-busting habits.
So like learning ninjas.
I like that. But there are a few more test-taking tips that I want to share with you.
Okay, I'm all ears.
One effective strategy is the hard start, jump to easy approach.
What's that?
You start by tackling the most challenging problems first.
But wouldn't that just make me feel more stressed and overwhelmed?
Not necessarily. The idea is that you're at your peak mental capacity at the beginning of the test, so you want to use that energy to tackle the tough stuff.
Okay.
And if you get stuck, you can always jump to an easier problem and come back to the harder one later.
So it's like strategically managing my energy and focus.
Exactly. And another important tip is to practice deep breathing.
Deep breathing. How does that help with test taking?
Well, when we're stressed, our bodies go into fight or flight mode.
Right.
And that can really impair our cognitive function.
Makes sense.
But deep breathing helps to calm our nervous system and bring us back into a state of focus and clarity.
So it's like hitting the reset button on our brains.
Exactly. And it's something you can do discreetly during a test whenever you start to feel overwhelmed.
I'm definitely going to try that. So to recap, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've explored powerful memory techniques like memory palaces, learned how to overcome illusions of competence through active recall and interleaving, and discovered strategies for conquering procrastination and even test-taking anxiety.
And it's all been in preparation for the most exciting part, sleep learning.
That's right. We've built our sleep-ready memory palaces and equipped ourselves with these essential learning techniques. Now it's time to guide you into the realm of delta brainwave learning, where you'll effortlessly integrate all this knowledge into your subconscious mind. Welcome back, everyone. So we've built our sleep-ready memory palaces, and we've got all these amazing learning techniques under our belts.
Yeah, we're ready to go.
So now what? It's time for the main event.
Sleep learning.
Sleep learning. All right, so how do we actually do it?
Well, basically, we're going to use delta brainwave entrainment to gently guide your brain into the delta state.
Okay, and remind me what's so special about the delta state.
Delta brainwaves are the slowest brainwave frequencies, and they're associated with deep, dreamless sleep.
Right.
And when our brains are in this state, they're super receptive to new information.
So it's like our brains are ready to download all that math knowledge we've been working on.
Exactly.
All right, so how do we get our brains into the delta state?
We're going to use a combination of guided meditation and binaural beats.
Okay, I'm familiar with guided meditation, but what are binaural beats?
They're basically two slightly different sound frequencies, one played in each ear.
Hmm.
And when your brain hears these two frequencies, it creates a third frequency. That's the difference between the two.
Right.
And this third frequency can actually entrain your brain waves to a specific frequency like delta.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is. And it's a really gentle and effective way to induce deep relaxation and enhance learning.
So we're going to be listening to these binaural beats while we're sleeping.
Yeah, we'll provide you with a special audio track that you can listen to as you drift off.
And while we're listening to this track, our brains will be absorbing all that math knowledge from our memory palaces.
Exactly. It's like planting seeds in fertile ground.
So it's a completely passive process. We don't have to do anything except listen to the track and sleep.
That's right. Just relax, drift off, and let your brain do the work.
This all sounds incredible, but I have to admit, I'm a little skeptical. I mean, how do we know it's actually working?
That's a fair question. The results of sleep learning might not be immediately obvious.
So we're not going to wake up suddenly being math geniuses.
Probably not. But you might notice that you're grasping concepts more easily or making connections that you hadn't seen before.
So it's more like a gradual unfolding of knowledge.
Exactly. It's like those seeds we planted. They're slowly germinating and taking root in your subconscious mind.
I like that analogy. So even though we're using sleep learning to give our brains a boost, we still need to actively engage with the material to really master it.
Absolutely. Sleep learning is a powerful tool, but it's not a magic bullet.
Right.
Think of it as accelerating your learning journey, providing you with a solid foundation upon which to build.
So the real magic happens when we combine the power of sleep learning with the dedication and effort of conscious practice.
Exactly.
And remember, learning is a lifelong journey.
It's not about reaching a destination, but about embracing the process of growth and discovery.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of sleep learning and building a mind for numbers, I want to leave you with one final thought.
What's that?
Don't be afraid to experiment. Try different techniques. Find what works best for you and have fun with it.
I agree. And remember, the most important thing is to be patient and persistent.
Learning takes time and effort. But with the right tools and the right mindset, you can achieve anything you set your mind to.
Absolutely. So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what you think is possible.
Sweet dreams, everyone.